Today, we take a trip to the Swiss Alps to look at a little fluff ball that encapsulates everything that nursery rhymes are made of. The Valais Blacknose Sheep is just adorable, but don't let its awe-inspiring features fool you. There's more to this little ruffian than meets the eye. Here we have a breed that has no business being on the endangered list. Valais are just too versatile, valuable, and well, simply too gorgeous to be allowed to die out. Let's get into what the Valais Blacknose Sheep has to offer for your farm and why they should be preserved at all costs. The Valais originated in Switzerland, somewhere in the southwestern region of Valais, hence the name. But they also go by their German moniker, Walliser Schwarznasenschaf. Since the two are exact translations of each other, and we run the risk of butchering the pronunciation multiple times in one video, we're going to play it safe with the English version for today. By the time they were first recorded in records in the 15th century, the Valais was the product of many years, maybe even hundreds of years, of breeding between neighboring breeds to hone in on the more desirable traits that the Swiss were looking for. They wanted a dual-purpose sheep that could provide both meat and wool for them, and they needed an animal that could live in the cold and snowy mountain ranges of Switzerland, where food was sometimes scarce and the weather was unforgiving for large chunks of the year. The Valais morphed into a rather large sheep that could scale rough terrains, and they weren't too picky about the conditions they were put into. And even though their wool has always fetched a handsome price on the market, the Valais managed to remain in the background. Somehow, they were almost entirely confined to Switzerland, well into the 19th century. It wasn't until 1962 that there was finally a breeding standard drawn up for them, and they were officially added to breeding rosters. Their place as a background character is a little perplexing. You would think that hobby breeders would flock to collect such a unique and attractive animal, and their meat and wool have always been held in high regard. Their meat is very tender and is almost exclusively served in upper-class establishments, while their wool is probably the best at taking to the dyeing process. The Valais fleece was just made to absorb color and retain it with the utmost richness and shine. They come out so vibrant that Valais wool can be spotted a mile away when they are mixed with other breeds' wool in the same vat of dye. And at the end of the day, it was indeed the handful of hobby breeders that ensured that more attention was brought to the Valais. In the 90s, they were looking at the very real possibility of the Valais going extinct when their numbers reached an all-time low. Less than 5,000 heads could be counted in Switzerland. Since they were exclusively kept in the region of Valais, their habitat and gene pool were getting smaller, and the lack of demand for their meat and wool just wasn't enough to give outsiders the incentive to keep them. A plan of action was written up by the early 2000s, and a handful of them were shipped to farmers in the British Isles to get their numbers up. Between the Swiss and the Brits, we can now count 3 times the amount of Valais sheep that we had in the 90s. They have traveled in smaller flocks to other parts of Europe, but those have been mostly to hobby farms and curious breeders. It was the British farmers that gave their resurgence the biggest push. Their interest was geared more toward large-scale farming. This led to very intentional and careful breeding practices that were formulated to bring their numbers up without depleting the gene pool. In the 20 years since they've been put under the microscope, there has been some very good marketing and exportation done around Valais meat and wool, and it's high time because they really do have a lot to offer as a market sheep. The Valais falls under the larger breeds of sheep. Rams weigh in at 130 kilograms, and ewes will reach 90 to 100 kilograms. Both sexes sport horns, and their distinctive twisted horns are one of the first things to look for in breed standards. Ewes are prone to twinning, and they don't require human intervention to breed successfully. Their lambs have high survival rates, and mothers look after their young exceptionally well. They have black faces and hocks and black spots on their knees, but otherwise, their fleece is pure white. Their wide mouths give them the appearance that they have a perpetual smile on their faces. Not that they needed another feature to make them even cuter. Valais have some of the biggest growth rates in their fleece that you could hope for. They need to be shorn at least twice a year. If they aren't shorn enough, all that growth can become completely wasted. But the shearing process is relatively quick and simple compared to other breeds. Since their coats are usually cross-fibered at the base, it comes off in one solid piece, and it's uniform from its back to its underbelly. Wastage is at the very minimum. Only their lower extremities around their hocks are ever discarded. They give off about 4 kilograms of wool per head on average, and larger rams can give off as much as 5 kilograms of wool at a time. It's the coarseness of their fleece that makes them so valuable. Most shearing animals are reserved for clothing and selected for softness, but Valais was bred to withstand the harsh elements in the Alps. and their wool is just as hardy as their terrain, making it perfect for textiles like carpets, furniture, and more industrial uses. It can withstand a lot while still feeling soft to the touch and retaining its natural luster. Their fleece is comparable to Tibetan lamb's wool, and it's used for the same purposes. Their meat is known for its juiciness, even though it's on the leaner side of mutton, making it a healthier and tastier option for your plate. A hanging carcass can range anywhere from 70 to 100 kilograms. That's quite a lot of meat to work with, and with a much higher market value than other mutton breeds are going for. The value that the Valais holds in its meat and fleece will pay you back tenfold, because they really aren't that expensive or hard to keep healthy. The genes they carry to survive in their mountainous homeland make them the best foragers. If you give them the space to roam, they'll take care of their own nutritional needs very adequately. So far, they've been very adaptable to every set of surroundings in the northern and cooler hemispheres. They've even gone as far south as New Zealand, and they've taken to their new home with perfect ease. But there is very little information available on how they've adapted to warmer and drier climates. It's doubtful that their heavy fleeces will fare well in tropical or arid conditions, but only time and a little experimentation will tell. After all, they've done exceptionally well away from the mountains where they had been for hundreds of years, despite the experts' warnings about taking them away from their high altitudes. So the Valais might just surprise us as their hooves spread closer to the equator. Their popularity among hobbyists is the reason we have to be grateful for their resurgence. And it really shouldn't come as a surprise that those who breed for the love of the animal were the ones who fought so hard to get things going in the right direction. The Valais crawled into their hearts with their adorable black-faced smiles and their outstanding temperament. They are so friendly toward humans that they've been compared to dogs. Valais are known to actively seek out human attention, they are curious, and they just adore scratches and pettings. These social tendencies make them especially easy during the shearing process, which is good news for the homesteaders. Could you imagine handling that enormous animal if it were aggressive? But the Valais aren't even known for serious fights among rams during mating season. They just don't have enough aggression in them to take a fight seriously enough to cause any real injuries to each other. The only real place of concern is to keep the parasites and diseases that are common in your specific area in mind. If you do have any conditions that can be inoculated against, then you should be taking those steps for any livestock you keep anyway. And as with any long-haired variety of sheep, a good bath in the warmer months every now and then will go a long way to keep them happier and healthier. Long-haired breeds also have a tendency to develop hoof conditions like foot rot and interdigital dermatitis. But when you adhere to a regular shearing schedule and keep an eye on them, you shouldn't have any more issues with Valais than with other long hairs. And we can't stress this enough. Clean water and living spaces for any animal are going to keep you clear of most of the conditions and illnesses that can befall livestock. And now, the burning question. Why on earth would such a prolific, easy, and utterly gorgeous breed of sheep have nearly died out completely? And why did it take us so long before we realized how dire the situation was? In less than 20 years, we've made incredible strides to preserve this valuable breed, but we aren't even close to getting their fluffy heads above water just yet. As of now, the Valais Blacknose Sheep is still critically endangered. They number less than 20,000 in the entire world. So keep your eye on the Valais to see how much larger their populations can grow in the next 20 years. Or maybe consider getting a few of these affectionate lambs for your land. We can guarantee that you'll find them to be one of the best producers and most gentle-natured livestock that you can find across the board. Before you leave, remember to click that subscribe button so you don't want to miss any new uploads. There's an endless variety of livestock and fowls still out there to learn about. And don't forget to leave your suggestions for interesting breeds that you'd like us to cover on this channel. Until next time, remember, there's no limit to what your land can achieve if you're always adapting and learning.